Self and Its Sheaths, by Besant. Preface. The ensuing discourses constitute a second series delivered at Udyar, the inaugural series having been presented at that locale in 1893, treating of the building of the cosmos, symbolism, and yoga. The system adopted and elucidated in the first series has been perpetuated in the second. Consequently, the preface to the volume of the preceding year may appropriately suffice for the present work. Besant, Benares, 1895. Chapter 1. The Nature of the Universal Self and Brahman. To comprehend man is to comprehend God. To comprehend God is to comprehend man. To investigate the universe is to acquire knowledge of both the divine and the human. For the cosmos constitutes the manifestation of the divine thought, and the cosmos finds its reflection within man. Addressing you in the preceding year, I discoursed upon the cosmos and its construction. Addressing you in the present year, I adopt the identical concept in its essence, yet through a novel presentation. On this occasion, I discourse to you regarding the self and its sheaths of that which, when understood, renders all problems soluble, of that which, when realized, obliterates all difficulties, of that which, when known, conveys us to the supreme peace, of that beyond which nothing exists, and in the knowing of which we ascertain everything that exists or may exist. In these, our convention assemblies, you must recollect that a dual purpose exists. We are gathered here for the labors of the Theosophical Society, which must presently be accomplished by our hands, and we are also present for the spiritual aspect of that mighty movement, for the comprehension of ourselves and of the world. This is ordained so that through knowledge we may succor, and through understanding we may guide. During these morning hours, distinct from the administrative portion of our endeavors, we are to contemplate this momentous problem of the self, attempting to garner glimpses regarding the self within the sheaths in which it is clothed, so that, thus studying, we may learn the supreme secret, and knowing the supreme secret, we may discharge our duty in the conflict of the exterior world. For thus Sri Krishna instructed us at Kurukshetra. There the Bhagavad Gita was articulated. There the supreme secret was unveiled, not to the hermit, not to the recluse, not to the individual sequestered from the haunts of men, but to Arjuna the prince and the warrior, to Arjuna the worker and the struggler. To him, for his guidance, was the supreme knowledge given. To him, for his assistance ere the battle, the truth concerning the self was told. In the preceding year, I indicated to you 3 lines of inquiry, 3 rays of light which, when converged to a single point, illuminated that which was obscure and clarified that which was difficult. The first of those rays of light emanated from the Shastras, from the spiritual teachings, and from the supreme world that constitutes the spiritual source of knowledge. Subsequently, I indicated to you that those great teachers of antiquity, who had bestowed the Shastras for the guidance of the populace, had in these latter days dispatched a messenger to address these same questions in a different fashion, and, through philosophical and intellectual language, to provide us with the key that had been lost, and to restore to us the solutions that had largely disappeared. I demonstrated further that from Western science, with its observation of the physical universe and its record of physical phenomena, we might acquire another ray of light. By uniting this with the other 2, placing side by side the spiritual teachings that are the holiest, the intellectual explanations that are requisite for the age, and the science which, in scrutinizing the physical universe, translates via the senses the word of the supreme life, we might in that manner gain a knowledge more accurate and an understanding more complete than if we rejected any one of the 3, or if we confined ourselves to the illumination shed by any single ray. I adhere to the identical plan this year. I select as the source of spiritual teaching those volumes that are most ancient and most sacred, those books that constitute the very word imparted to man, that science of Brahman which lies concealed for us within the Upanishads, and exists there, if we can but locate it, for the guidance of our feet. I employ the writings of Helena Blavatsky to assist us in our study, she who based herself upon those ancient teachings and cast light upon them from the secret knowledge. And I also employ the discoveries of Western science to aid us, which present the abstract truth in concrete form. Thus, by understanding the universe on its physical side, we may perceive something of the divine word, of the truth of ourselves and of the all. And in this manner I hope to assist you, I hope to conduct you into some understanding of the self, and some comprehension of the sheaths in which it is enwrapped. Permit me to state, so that no misunderstanding may arise, the reason I return to the ancient writings rather than to the later philosophical schools. There exists a mighty name in Indian literature, the name of Sri Shankaracharya, which no man can pronounce without reverence for the subtlety of his intellect and for the vast range of his intelligence. What was the nature of his work? He arrived in the Kali Yuga. He arrived when the world was forfeiting or had forfeited the majority of its spiritual light. He arrived to construct around the science of Brahman the buttress of the intellect, the walls of subtle argumentation, and the defenses that should prove strong and mighty, upon which the intellect of the world might fracture its teeth in vain. He performed this task so that behind that wall of intellectual subtlety, behind that fortress of keen intellectual argument, the supreme truth might remain unoutraged by assault, and might be preserved for those who were worthy, protected for the spiritual mind. If you select the Brahma Sutras as an example, accompanied by the commentary of Shankaracharya, you will perceive exactly what I intend. In his commentary, one finds the most refined hair-splitting. In his commentary, the most subtle distinctions. In his commentary, the most careful guarding of language and the shading of every possible delicacy of thought. And behind all that commentary lie the sutras themselves. If you desire to acquire their inner essence, if you require them not for external intellectual arguments but for the internal nourishment of the soul, then accept the sutras alone in their original tongue, in their own unadorned form. In silent meditation, when the senses are quiescent and when the mind is tranquil, when the light of the self is shining, take then a sutra and hearken to it in its own words alone, and you will ascertain a spiritual truth that no argument may avail to reach. And now, let us attempt to gaze backward into what constitutes the past for us. Let us proceed to the inception of a universe, and attempt to realize the signification of the self, for the self of the universe and the self of man are one, and in knowing the self we know that which lies at the root of the universe and of man alike. Thus traversing backward to the beginning, we arrive at an infinite darkness where there exists no thought, no language, and where nothing human or limited may exist. It possesses no name, no words may describe it. Nothing can be articulated concerning that which is not utterly mistaken. When the writers of antiquity had proceeded backwards and backwards, when they had reached Brahman, who is without origin, who is the one and the all, then, in the face of the silence beyond and the darkness, they employed one epithet only to describe it. It is beyond Brahman, it is supreme Brahman, para Brahman. And there all voice is silent, and all thought falls dead. However, as we attempt in thought to observe the darkness before the universe is born, placing ourselves by an effort of the imagination where there is nothing, where everything is, as it were, emptiness and space, then, as standing in the darkness of the night and looking skyward into the obscurity, there might glimmer through the gloom a light which is formless. We know not whence it originates nor how, save that where there was the blackness of darkness, There is now a glimmering that foretells the advent of the sun. So in that emptiness which is all fullness, in that darkness indescribable by us, there is a glimmer. There is light without form, states the scripture, luminousness that possesses no shape, light that is solely light without limitation. And upon that glimmering light our thought may rest for a moment, for there lies the initial point where thought is possible at all. Then we perceive sounding forth those sublime words of the Mundakopanishad. Luminous without form, without origin, without life, without mind. Without life, without mind. What signify these strange words concerning the origin of all life and mind? He possesses nothing. Indeed, he is nothing, he, from whom springs the root of all that shall exist. From that which possesses and constitutes nothing, being no specific entity precisely because it is the source of all the latent, unfolded possibilities of everything destined to be. From that, a universe is to be constructed. From that, all that shall exist is to emerge. Yet mind is absent. Wherefore? Because mind necessitates more than the one, whereas that is one. Because mind postulates separation, yet here no separateness exists. Because mind implies a thinker and an object of thought, whereas there remains as yet only the one, within whom is enfolded all that is conceivable but has not yet entered into manifestation. Consequently, with propriety and wisdom, Madame Blavatsky, when addressing this subject, casting it into the intellectual form requisite for our thought to be comprehended on earth, when addressing that which transcends all consciousness, mind, and thought, not by virtue of diminution, but by virtue of infinite abundance, depth, breadth, and all-encompassing nature, observes, being absolute consciousness and absolute motion, it appears to the limited senses of those attempting to describe the indescribable as unconsciousness and immobility. Concrete consciousness cannot be predicated of abstract consciousness, any more than the quality of being wet can be predicated of water, wetness being its inherent attribute and the causative agent of that quality in other substances. Consciousness implies limitations and qualifications, an object of which to be conscious and a subject to perceive it. We designate absolute consciousness as unconsciousness because it appears to us that it must necessarily be so, just as we term the absolute darkness because, to our finite understanding, it appears wholly impenetrable. Nevertheless, we fully recognize that our perception of such phenomena fails to accord them justice. We involuntarily distinguish in our minds, for instance, between unconscious absolute consciousness and mere unconsciousness by secretly endowing the former with some indefinite quality corresponding, upon a plane higher than our thoughts can attain, to what we know as consciousness within ourselves. However, this is not a variety of consciousness that we can successfully differentiate from what appears to us as unconsciousness. Thus, she cites again from the divine Pomander, God is not a mind, but the cause that mind exists. Not a spirit, but the cause that spirit exists. Not light, but the cause that light exists. Let us endeavor to realize the significance of this. The human mind thinks, but to think, it must recall the past, realize the present, and anticipate the future. In Brahman, however, there is neither past, nor present, nor future. There exists one eternal now, devoid of distinction regarding time, place, or the succession of states. Therefore, a great teacher is quoted in this connection, appearing baffled by the limitations of human thought and language. As stated in the scriptures, the past time is the present time, as is the future, which, though it has not yet come into existence, nevertheless is. Our concepts of duration and time are, in short, derived entirely from our sensations in accordance with the laws of association. Though inextricably bound to the relativity of human knowledge, they can possess no existence save in the experience of the individual ego, and they perish when its evolutionary march dispels the maya of phenomenal existence. What is time, for instance, but the panoramic succession of our states of consciousness? In the words of a master, I feel irritated at having to use these three clumsy words: past, present, and future, miserable concepts of the objective phases of the subjective whole. They are about as ill-suited for the purpose as an axe is for fine carving. In that eternal now, no thought as we comprehend thought is possible. In that eternal present, no distinction such as we create can exist. Therefore, Brahman is without mind because he is above it. The scripture subsequently asserts that out of him proceed life, mind, and all else. Thus, that first and supreme, the one out of which everything is to be constructed, is Brahman, the self of the universe. It is Ishvara, the Lord. What, then, is the subsequent step? Again, from the sacred writings, I select the words that are to guide us. It willed, I will multiply. Therein lies the genesis of the universe. Therein is the commencement of differentiation. This is an internal differentiation, not an external expansion. It is not a change of nature, but a change of condition. It is not an alteration of substance, but the emergence of variety within the one, attributable to the decree, I will multiply. The primary stage of this internal differentiation is that which manifests as life, stated by the scripture to be concealed in name and form. Subsequently, from the life concealed in name and form, the mind emerges, so declares the scripture. Let us now consider this momentarily through the explanation provided in the secret doctrine, and subsequently through science, which will cast so startling a light upon this marvelous primordial stage that you will realize the veracity of the assertion that the universe is the expression of divine thought. Intellectually posited, this differentiation occurs within the one. This internal preparation for a universe is presented in the form of the three logoi. I lack the time to dilate upon them. I can only mention them. The first is the essence of life and the cause of all. The second is dual. Spirit matter, positive negative, or however one may choose to designate it. The third is divine ideation or the power of thought. Should you desire the details, you must revert to the lectures of the preceding year, for I have not the time to reiterate them. Now let us turn to science. Suppose you were to take a microscope in hand, and suppose that, looking through the instrument, you observed the primordial germ of living matter from which a plant or an animal was to develop. You would perceive beneath your eyes, under the lens, a minute speck of matter, and within that speck, a single spot. As you observed the speck of matter and the central spot within it, you would slowly become conscious, unable to state precisely when it began or exactly when you first discerned it, but through a slow change imperceptible at the inception and becoming perceptible only gradually. As you watched through the great magnifying power of the glass, you would witness a separation within the central spot. You would observe two spots appearing toward each extremity of the speck of matter. You would witness, within this single speck and the central spot, a slow, strange aggregation of the material substance, until the change, when complete, would reveal that instead of one you possess two, and these two situated apart at the two poles, as they are termed, of this minute mass. Thus, you would possess two separate, distinct spots, duality where there had previously been unity, internal separation where there had been none. You would perceive the two poles within a single mass. These poles differ, though they appear identical, from the same substance, for there existed only one. Through internal differentiation, two separate yet unseparated bodies have formed. How do I know they are different, you might inquire? Because action occurs between them, because lines are established and shapes appear between those two poles, because between the two poles of the speck of matter, there is alteration, variety, and differentiation. There are increasingly distinct indications of interchanging action. Thus, it comes to pass that the one is recognized as positive and the other as negative, and between the two, every formative process occurs, and the germ of the forthcoming plant is constructed. Subsequently, the plant grows, differentiates further, and develops into a triad, yielding your root, your stalk, and your leaves. Yet all these are formed in germ between the two poles that were first one, and then two. It is the most marvelous picture, in the concrete, of the differentiation within the supreme. Between the two poles, a universe is constructed, and from duality, the entirety of variation emerges. Therefore, we discern from Scripture that subsequent to the one giving birth to the two, and after life has evolved into name and form, there arises the mind, followed by ideation, and subsequently the divine thought, the tableau of all that shall be, and the image of the universe which has not yet attained birth. For this constitutes the womb of Brahman of which Sri Krishna speaks. This is the eternal womb from which the universe shall proceed, and the third Mahet, styled as the third Logos or Sri Krishna, according to one's terminology, is the eternal Father who deposits the seed within the womb from which all else shall issue. This represents the manifestation of the universe within the divine form. Thus, one reads in the 11th discourse of the Bhagavad Gita of that moment when the four-armed Krishna appeared in his divine form, extending from earth to sky, blazing like 1,000 suns before the dazzled eyes of Arjuna. When Arjuna, endowed with the divine eye, that faculty which alone might gaze into such splendor as no mortal eye could endure and no mortal mind could grasp, cried out in his ecstasy, "In thy body, I perceive all the gods and all hierarchies of living entities. For all exists within the divine thought as idea prior to its birth as form. Before it enters into manifestation, it is deposited in the treasure house of the universal mind. Therefore, it is written that everything is held dear for the sake of the self, not for the external configuration, but for the inner self, the lowest as well as the highest, the minute particle of dust as well as the loftiest deva. Brahman resides in all. It pervades all. Everything is contained therein. Confront the imperfection of the universe, and therein you will discover the supreme consolation. If a universe is to exist, there must be limitation. If there is limitation, there must be less than perfection, that is, imperfection. If there is imperfection, only then can variety exist. For separated entities cannot be perfect, inasmuch as perfection belongs to the unlimited and the all. Consequently, if a universe is to be constructed at all, imperfection must appear. The boundaries of imperfection are the boundaries of variety. This signifies, in our terrestrial terminology, that there must be evil as well as good. Evil is merely imperfection, and where limitation exists, that which we term evil must of necessity exist. Grant the separated entities self-moving power, and there will ensue the collision of one against another until each obeys the law of the whole. Because variety is essential to a universe, Sri Krishna declared, "I am the dice of the gambler, just as I am the purity of the righteous." One cannot separate a single item from the supreme. It is the self of all, exists in all, and is all. Then, indeed, follows further differentiation. Then, indeed, though all be itself, all becomes apparently separate and even in conflict. A singular paradox. Let me ascertain if, once again, I may derive an analogy from science to assist you. When the solar system is in the process of formation, a great nebula appears, a mist of fire. That fire mist contains within it everything that shall be gradually evolved in the solar system. Within that fire mist resides everything in essence that the system can exhibit. Presently, a mass of fiery vapor is projected from the central mass. It is a planet, a future world. As this process continues, planet after planet is projected from the central mass yet continues to revolve around it, until finally, one observes a sun in the center and planets circling about. They are identical to the sun in their essence. All consist of the whirling fire mist that was undifferentiated in the beginning. However, it has now become a sun that illuminates separated planets. Although they are identical in essence, there is a difference in condition. The analogy is not perfect, yet it may assist us. Thus, it is written that as one sun illuminates the whole world, so one self resides in every separated body. Yet all is itself. You recall the narrative of Uddalaka, who instructed his son using salt dissolved in water. You remember how he bade the youth take the salt and place it into the water, and how, on the subsequent day, he requested its return, but the youth replied that he could not locate it. Then the father commanded, "Taste from the surface of the water," and the son replied, "It is saline." The father said, "Taste from the middle of the water," and the son replied, "It is saline." The father said, "Taste from the bottom of the water," and the son replied, "It is saline." Then the father explained to his son that just as the salt, though invisible, pervaded all, so it was with Brahman, the universal soul. All-pervading, omnipresent, eternal, the root, the life, the essence, the substance of all. One and indivisible in substance, yet separate in the manifested sheaths that it is destined to evolve from its own substance. Whatsoever exists lives by it, the self of the universe, that from which everything proceeds. Subsequently, Uddalaka provided a bridge from the one to the many. He had taught his son that the salt was ubiquitous in the water though it had disappeared from sight. He had taught him that the universe was pervaded by the one. And then he uttered the words, "It is the universal self. O Svetaketu, thou art that. Therein lies our bridge. Thou art Atma and Brahman are one. Within the heart of men, there exists a cavity, and their Brahman is to be found hidden, the self of man, the self of the universe. If we speak of the self of man, we sometimes designate it Atma. Subsequently, we speak of the Paramatma as the self of all. If we speak of man as Purusha, then we speak of Purushottama as the self of all. Yet it is one and the same everywhere. In the great and in the small, there is no difference, there is no separation. There is one eternal, immortal, and ancient self, and that self is the self in you and in me. There may be a difference in condition, in manifestation, but the essence and the nature are one and the same. Therefore, it is written in that most marvelous of all Upanishads, the Khandogya, the mightiest and most mystical of all, the most arduous to unravel and to comprehend, that Atma is the bridge. Crossing that bridge, the blind are no longer blind, the wounded are no longer wounded, the sorrowful no longer grieve. Therefore, upon crossing that bridge, nights verily become as days. Eternally radiant is that locus of Brahman. Thus again it is written in the Mundaka Upanishad, "Cease from words, he is the bridge to immortality." Now he is Brahman, dwelling in the secret place in the cavity of the heart. For Atma and Brahman are one, and in discovering the self we discover Brahman. Let us proceed to our next stage. I turn to the same great scripture. I extract from it further words, for our next step is so difficult, so little understood, that out of the lack of understanding arise the many controversies of the schools and the continual arguments which divide intellect from intellect. Let us then consider the simple words first, and subsequently analyze them. It is written in the same Khandogya Upanishad, "He who willeth, I shall smell." He is Atma, desiring to smell odors. He who willeth, I shall speak. He is Atma, desiring to utter words. He who willeth, I shall hear. He is Atma, desiring to hear sounds. He who willeth, I shall think. He is Atma. Manas is the divine I. Yet again we recall how we have read that desire awakened in the bosom of the Eternal and gave birth to manifestation, and further, that the nature of Purusha is desire. How shall we reconcile the paradox? How shall we comprehend the seeming contradiction that Atma is at once the witness and the agent, is at once quiescent and active, is at once not doing and doing, is at once the changeless, immutable, and yet the only agent in the universe of manifested things? If we can comprehend this, then our path opens before us. Here lies the crux of our difficulty. Here lies the great problem that we must now endeavor to solve. As Atma, the self is quiescent. As Atma, it is immutable. As Atma, it stands as the witness. As Atma, it performs no action and engages in no deed. What, therefore, is the signification of the scripture when it asserts that Atma executes all these functions? As Atma, other than whom naught exists, exercises volition within itself, it fashions from its own essential substance that which we designate as the sheaths. These sheaths are, in truth, Atma itself, for nothing else exists. Yet they represent differentiations within itself, altered states consequent to its own will. I will multiply, wherein it becomes active and wherein it performs the manifold deeds of which the scripture treats. In its intrinsic nature, it remains immutable and inactive. Within the sheaths, however, it becomes the actor, not apart from the sheath but resident within it, not severed from the sheath but operating through it. Thus, whilst in itself it moves not, within the sheaths it propels all that exists, within that very vehicle which, for this purpose, it hath brought forth from itself into manifestation. Consequently, we characterize all phenomena as Maya, for there exists but the one reality, from whom all things proceed by ideation, and from whom all issues forth via volition. Yet, to you and to me who perceive from the exterior, that is, from the standpoint of the sheath, distinction appears, for we behold the sheath and discern not the Atma, which lies concealed by name and form. For in one sheath it manifests as will, in another as desire, in another as vital activity, and in yet another as chemical attraction and repulsion. Indeed, it constitutes all the wondrous forces within the universe. Nevertheless, the differentiation resides in the sheath and not in the one that is. It lies in the altered conditions of manifestation, and not in the manifesting life. If I employ an electric current and transmit it through water charged with a silver solution, the silver shall precipitate, and that precipitation shall be the result of the invisible current. Furthermore, if I conduct that current onward into a slender filament, a thin wire, light shall radiate from the wire, and that shall be the effect of the selfsame current. In the former instance, the difference of condition precipitates a solid. In the latter, the difference of condition emits light. It is a singular electric force in both instances, and the variance in manifestation lies within the medium in which it operates, not within the force itself. While the analogy is imperfect, as all such comparisons must be, it may yet assist us in comprehending how the one may be manifested in diverse modes, how there exists one Atma in substance, yet multiplicity arises through the altered conditions we term sheaths. It is further written that although the body is mortal, it serves as the abode of Atma. Moreover, within the sheaths, Atma enters into contact with objects desirable and repulsive, whereas apart from the sheaths, it touches nothing. Because it enters into contact with the surrounding environment whilst within the sheaths, it becomes subject to these interactions. The efferent energy is Atma. The sheath engenders the differentiation in manifestation. Thus shall we commence our understanding. This constitutes the juncture at which I must suspend my discourse this morning, to resume it on the morrow. This is the principle I desire you now to realize and retain, for upon this rests the comprehension of all that ensues. Atma, emanating from itself all that is destined to exist, operates within these differentiated selves in various manners. It labors to fashion the matter of a material universe. Within the atom, it works to construct the physical substratum, striving to achieve a specific result. Thus, one trajectory of this manifesting energy is dedicated to the constitution of physical atoms utilized for the physical universe, for the corporeal frame of man, and for the entire lineage of Prakritic evolution in this and every region of the cosmos. This represents the evolution of form of all that possesses extension, whether it be physical, whether it be astral, whether it pertains to the realm of kama, desire, or whether it belongs to the sphere of manas, thought. Nay, it may pertain to the very region of buddhi, yet it shall remain a sheath. That is to say, it shall possess form, it shall possess, as it were, extension, and it shall serve the purpose of manifestation, which necessitates the existence of form. And you will recall that 5 sheaths are enumerated. The highest is the Anandamaya kosha, the bliss sheath or buddhi. Proceeding downwards, there exists the sheath for higher manas, the Vijnanamaya kosha. Subsequently, for lower manas and kama, the Manomaya kosha, encompassing all manifestations of operative intellect and desire, and yet another for prana, and finally the food sheath, the Annamaya kosha, which is composed of the physical matter of the universe. These are the sheaths, and all must be constructed by the one. In the fabrication of these sheaths lies the differentiation of manifestation. Therein lies the alteration of forms, and therein lies the activity destined to constitute the entire sheath aspect of the universe and of man. Yet that is not all. There exists another facet of this activity which contributes to the edification, by means of the sheath of the individual man. It is no longer merely the Atma in essence, that is, the one, no longer merely the sheath in its separable materials of the form aspect. Rather, there is the name, the inner man, the individual. This is that which is destined to pass from birth to birth, that which is destined to garner experience, that which is destined to learn, and by learning to know. It is that which shall evolve into the individual mind of man, constructed by life and death, by birth and decay, by passing into Svarga and by returning from Svarga into new birth. Through these births and deaths, it shall be fashioned into a mirror of the all. It shall become the individual self which is and ever shall be, possessing its own knowledge and its own distinction. It is of this that Sri Krishna spoke. It is unborn, constant, and eternal, for in its essence it is Atma itself, and yet it is also that which has experienced births and deaths, though in itself it is neither born nor dying. Sri Krishna, looking back, knew all his prior incarnations and recalled the events of each. Arjuna had been born many times, although he knew it not. Likewise, you and I have been born many times heretofore, and before us, too, births and deaths may yet extend. That constitutes the edification of the individual. That is the construction achieved through the sheaths, a process slowly accomplished. Thus, we shall suspend our inquiry at this juncture. There is one self, Atma, in itself inactive. There are sheaths of its substance wherein it is destined to act. There are sheaths constructed by it along one line of evolution, and subsequently, there is Atma operating within the sheaths to build up the individual, the ego, the self-conscious I, which shall perceive itself as separate in manifestation, although rooted by its origin in the One and the All. Elaborated into further detail, this concept will lead us through this labyrinth, serving as a clue to guide our perplexed steps out of the apparent contradictions of the one and the many, the all which is at once singular and manifold. Retain that thought for this morning, and we shall pursue it whithersoever it leads us in the mornings that lie ahead. But comprehend that clearly, and all else will become simple and definite. We shall ascertain how our bodies today are composed of atoms, how these atoms, through transmutation, shall be integrated into the living man, how the man of this Manvantara shall become the deva of another, how, step by step, this growth is ever proceeding. We shall learn how in every universe there exists Ishvara, how in each one he weaves from himself the material basis, how, from the elaborated material basis of past universes, he fashions the living egos of men, how out of these he constitutes the devas of another universe and ultimately unites them in himself, that is, the All. Such is the momentous subject upon which we are to contemplate during these 4 mornings of our assembly, the supreme secret of the Master, by the knowledge of which all things are known. Chapter 2. The Physical and Vital Sheaths of Action. My brothers, permit me to recall at the commencement the 3 rays of light we intend to employ to illuminate the arduous subject that lies before us. First, we utilize the ray of spiritual light deriving from the ancient scriptures, specifically the Shrutis, and, with certain limitations, the Smritis. Subsequently, we accept the ray of intellectual light transmitted through Helena Blavatsky, which provides the intellectual ladder whereby we may ascend to the higher regions. Finally, we incorporate the ray emanating from Western science, which examines the physical universe and bears record to the facts it observes. You will recall that these are the 3 elements I designated yesterday as the rays of light converging toward a single focus, intended to illuminate the obscurity we seek to pierce. Regarding science, permit me to posit that the opposition we perceive today between scientific inquiry and spiritual knowledge is a cultivation of modern growth and does not originate from the ancient world. In former times, science functioned as the handmaiden of religion rather than its adversary. I cherish the hope that it shall constitute one of the glories of theosophy to restore science to its true duty, demonstrating upon the sensuous plane that which religion reveals upon the spiritual, becoming once more the child and the servant, the helper and the buttress of the ancient wisdom religion. The section of the subject we must address today concerns, primarily, the purpose of the sheaths. This shall not be fully elaborated, as that is reserved for my final lecture, but I shall offer a brief discourse on their objective to demonstrate how and why such sheaths must exist. Following this, we shall examine the genesis of a universe. For by studying the becoming of the current universe, we shall comprehend both what the present inherits from the past and what it is preparing to bequeath to the future. In every universe, there occurs a preparation of that which shall serve as material in the subsequent universe. Within each universe exists an inheritance from the past, consisting of that which was prepared in previous universes for the present. One cannot divorce one universe from another, nor treat a single manifestation as though it were isolated from the remainder. There is a perpetual outbreathing from the one, followed by an inbreathing into the one when a manvantara concludes, then an outbreathing for a fresh manvantara, and an inbreathing when that too is finished. Yet all outbreathings and inbreathings remain intimately connected. The current outbreathing contains the results of the inbreathings that have preceded it in time. Therefore, to understand, we must recall that in every universe we look backward for its inheritance and look forward to discern its destination. We study the present universe because it is the most proximate, and herein we may best learn to comprehend the process of becoming. Concluding this brief delineation of my discourse, I shall address in detail two of the sheaths. The two lower sheaths, being that of anam or food, and that of prana or life. Tomorrow morning, I shall treat the two sheaths pertaining to mental and emotional activities, the manomaya kosha and the nanamaya kosha, reserving for the final discourse the limited commentary possible regarding the highest sheath, the anandamaya kosha, and thereafter detailing the object of the sheaths and the ultimate result emerging from the whole. Commencing immediately with the first division I have sketched for today's work, the object of the sheaths, allow me to remind you of the text in the Mundakopanishad, which I quoted yesterday regarding Brahman being without life and without mind. In the very next shloka, it is written, "From him are produced life, mind, and all the organs ether, air, light, water, and earth." Purposely, allow me to state in parenthesis I am translating. I am not employing here a distinct quotation in Sanskrit from the sacred books, and I shall frankly articulate my reason. Shlokas deriving from the Vedas possess a mantric force that may not be utilized in a mixed assemblage, nor raised amidst the conflicting magnetisms gathered here without distinction or separation. I am conveying the teaching. I am not utilizing the Sanskrit tongue in the definite order of its syllables, which endows them with the force of mantrams. Every quotation I intend to present this morning I have personally verified in the Sanskrit, that I may ensure I am rendering the meaning accurately. I shall not in any instance quote the original, for I will not assume the responsibility of repeating the mantram form within the mixed audience I now address. It is written in the Mundakopanishad that from Brahman the One, I need not repeat today that which I addressed to you yesterday, comes life. Prana is the term employed. I shall demonstrate presently that prana is Atma in its outgoing activity. Subsequently mind, manas, which is the second, then the five elements as we know them, ether, air, fire, water, and earth, 7 in all. These constitute the 7 regions of the universe, the 7 sheaths of Brahman as the self of the all. Corresponding to these are the sheaths in man with which we must now deal. The object of the sheaths in man is to facilitate contact with each corresponding region in the universe. Thus, Atma, which in itself is pure sat and therefore quiescent, and which cannot, as Atma, interact with these various regions via direct contact, may through the sheaths establish contact with all things. Thereby, it may gradually construct an individual self-consciousness, or indeed many individual self-consciousnesses. The formation of these individuals is the objective of the universe. At the conclusion of the Manvantara, there exists these separate self-consciousnesses which were not existent as such at the inception, but existed only potentially within the Atma, the root of all possibility. We arrive, then, at our material universe as we designate it. Let us realize that within this material universe, in the widest sense of the term Prakriti, we possess the sevenfold division to which I have just alluded. Furthermore, the essence of matter, not matter as we perceive it here, but its very essence, is eternal. Prakriti, declares Sri Krishna, is eternal, not in its manifestation, but in its essence, not in its expression, but in its root. The root of matter not yet in manifestation is eternal within Brahman. Otherwise, it could never exist. For, once again, the divine teacher avers, the non-existent cannot become, neither can the existent cease to be. You must adhere firmly to the principle that if a proposition be true, outer and superficial difficulties are obstacles to be conquered without relinquishing the fundamental truth you possess. Possess sufficient faith in truth to cleave to fact when you have ascertained it. Believe that if a thing be a fact, it must eventually coordinate with all other truths, and as knowledge increases, all superficial difficulties shall gradually vanish. Now this matter or Prakriti, which is without beginning in its essence, can never be severed from that which is co-eternal with it, that which accompanies it into manifestation and abides with it forevermore. For one cannot speak of matter in isolation. If you articulate matter, you must articulate spirit. If you invoke Prakriti, you must invoke Purusha. They constitute the two aspects of the one existence and are never to be separated in fact, although in thought we distinguish them by quality so that we may exercise the faculty of cogitation. Yet, in manifestation, they are never sundered. There exists no such entity as dead matter. There exists no spirit, force, or life devoid of matter by which it assumes form and demonstrates its energy. Wherever there is name, there is form. Wherever there is form, there is name. Life is encompassed by the two, and they are never separated in manifestation. In addressing this subject, Helena Blavatsky elucidates that matter becomes, and she cites the teachings of a potent Egyptian sage who derived his knowledge from the rishis of antiquity and disseminated through Egypt to Greece and subsequently to the Western world, that Eastern doctrine which constitutes the source of all our knowledge concerning these subjects. This illustrious Egyptian, Hermes, speaking precisely as he had been instructed, proclaimed, "O my son, matter becomes. Formerly it was, for matter is the vehicle of becoming." Comprehend this concept. Matter is a vehicle of becoming, and no universe may exist without this vehicle of becoming, nor without the force that informs it. Elaborating upon this with greater clarity, and thereby rendering us a service of such magnitude that her name should be held ever in honor and respect among us, she explicates the significance of this teaching. Everything that is, that was, or that shall be eternally exists. Even the myriad forms within the universe are finite and perishable only in their objective aspect, and never in their ideal form. They subsist as ideas within eternity, and when they vanish as forms, they persist as reflections. If you grasp this realization, you will discern the links that unite the universes. Nothing that has ever existed can perish. It endures perpetually within the eternal thought. Objective existence perishes, yet the ideal form remains forever and is transmitted from Manvantara to Manvantara. The objective forms of the present will be bequeathed to the subsequent universe as ideal forms. They are destined to govern the trajectory of evolution, such that each successive universe inherits the karma of the past, even as it modifies and constructs the karma of all universes yet to manifest. Now, an atom constitutes simultaneously the form and the force of life. In every universe, the atom is the basis which, in that universe, is constructed for the lowest types of manifestation on every plane. That is to say, it is the form of every plane. Within the aforementioned seven, the five great elements, prana and manas, you possess in each of these planes this basis of the atom, modified as we descend lower and lower into increasingly objective forms, yet ever present as the form aspect of the region. This construction of the form aspect within the atom is reiterated in every universe, and the atom of one universe transitions as an ideal form to assume its place as the life of the evolutionary line of the next. Endeavor to comprehend this, for it is the key to the enigma in every universe of forms involving, and instinct with, life. The process of becoming proceeds through the universe, subsequently passing into the ideal and remaining as a reflection in the eternal one that is, and finally emerging in the subsequent universe to function as the informing life of the atoms therein. Thus, in each instance, that which in one universe constitutes, to employ an inelegant phrase, an outer form, becomes in the next an informing life, and the atom of the one becomes the mind and the energy of the next. Thus, each universe is constructed and concatenated with those that, in time, lie behind it. Let us now perceive the atom as both a form and a force. The Atma, and in addition, the sheath which Atma differentiates within itself for the manifestation of its own energy. Thus, it is recorded in an esoteric scripture that the jivas are the souls of the atoms. Again, I urge you to realize that thought. Jiva is another designation for Atma in manifestation. Jiva is the soul of the atom. This implies that in every atom you possess this duality. The Atma that informs, and the differentiated Atma which constitutes the sheath. This represents the labor of building the Prakritic aspect, as it were, of Atma. Reverting to Helena Blavatsky, we ascertain that these atoms are visible, complex units that operate from within, a point of paramount importance, as you will observe when I presently address what science reveals regarding them. For Helena Blavatsky, writing upon these atoms, stated, as we have seen, that there are souls to these atoms, and that they are informed with jiva. She proceeds to assert that these atoms permeate the immensity of space, that within the atoms resides all activity, and that the atoms become complex units. Note the phrase, every atom becomes a complex unit, and that they propel molecules into activity from within. Let us now turn to science. Science concerns itself with atoms in their chemical form and also, naturally, in the physical. The chemical form is the one that sheds the most illumination upon the occult aspect of nature. The physical deals more with the outer manifestation. The chemical deals more with the forces that mold that outer manifestation. Western science, dealing chemically with the atom, presents certain facts, and they are indeed singular. I shall select one specific form of atom so that my exposition may be distinct, and let me state that should this prove arduous to follow, as I am aware it is, you will presently have it in print, and you may study the technicalities which I cannot avoid when I am addressing a highly instructed audience, as I have the right to expect this audience to be. I lack the time to explicate as I would for a popular audience. I shall select carbon, an atom of carbon in the mineral kingdom. It is a simple entity. It unites with other elements and enters into combinations, possessing the capacity to join via a fourfold linkage. If I may appeal for a moment to your imagination, visualize a carbon atom, conceive of a sphere, and into that sphere 4 hooked rods are inserted, such that their 4 hooks remain outside. Thus, you will have a sphere with 4 protruding hooks. That represents the chemical atom of carbon in the mineral kingdom. By each of these hooks, it can unite with a hook of another chemical atom, such that it can join with 4 other atoms, provided that each of these 4 atoms possesses only one hook of its own. In the mineral kingdom, you may trace this phenomenon throughout, and you may observe a multitude of compounds of different chemical elements in which carbon plays its part, in which it joins itself with one or the other, in which it unites itself by the... Do you want access to this and all the complete audiobooks on the channel, plus the ebook version? Click the link in the description or scan the QR code in the left corner of the screen to access our library, where you can listen to your favorite esoteric books without ad interruptions, lock your screen, or use other apps while the narration plays, and even download the ebook version to follow along as you listen. Listen on your computer via web browser, or download the app from the Play Store. After subscribing, you will receive an email with your login details, password, and step-by-step instructions on how to access the books through the Hotmart app.